Today I am speaking with A.L.N. from Mizmor. I was never quite sure how to pronounce it. Mizmor?
Yeah, I think it's actually pronounced Mizmor, but I say Mizmor because I'm just a dumb American.
I'll say Mizmor as well because I'm not sure what to say. In any case, thanks a lot for being here with us. Um, you are going to release your new record with Mizmor on July 21st on Profound Law Records. That new album is called Prosaic, and well, I guess this is what we're going to talk about today. So let's start. I have a fair amount of questions. I hope you're ready.
Yeah,
And I hope you're going to enjoy them as well, as much as possible. Okay, so first question. You have explained in the past how Mizmor was used to channel your path from religion towards atheism, if I'm not mistaken. However, in Prosaic, you're leaving behind that for, let's say, more earthly constants. Um, Looking on the dictionary, prosaic can be defined with things that are factual, commonplace, ordinary, or unromantic, for example. Would you say that fits?
absolutely. Yeah. I was the thought behind creating Prosaic was to intentionally make a record that was less grandiose and epic, that wasn't supposed to be some sort of masterpiece, but was more zoomed in a slice of life from the hip sort of way, to explore daily life, work, purpose, meaning, and all the absurdity therein. I don't feel like I need to talk about the gigantic cosmic questions at the moment. I've done that for a long time, and I feel at a place with that sort of stuff where I'm at peace. And now I'm just here existing, and that's kind of where Prosaic enters the scene.
Okay, and I guess this is why there's been a change in the art style of the album as well, and the artwork. I mean, because if you look at Yod or Cairn or your EP last year with End, um, they were all kind of in this polished, realistic theme, whereas um, the artwork for Prosaic is a more rural, let's say, old American countryside type of thing or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Very perceptive. I went back to the illustration style. It's something I've done a while back, but I was kind of captured by surreal paintings for a long time, and sort of that uh, epic, grandiose vibe that they complement the music with so well, which is exactly the type of thing that I wanted to pivot from. And I felt like the illustration had more grit and more kind of accessibility, and kind of everyman quality to it, that I wasn't getting from painting. So going to the illustration felt very uh, suitable for the content matter.
Yeah. And about that artwork, so it gives you this kind of middle of nowhere feeling, which is also something you could get from Cairns, for example, at least in my opinion. Um, I think it still gives this kind of feeling of loneliness or estrangement, which is not uncommon in your music. What do you think? This is just my interpretation of things. Might be wrong, of course.
No, that's
What do
interesting.
you think?
I think it's both, because I mean, my music is, intrinsically it's just a one person project in the studio. It's just me doing everything. So it's always been kind of this outlet that's at the bottom of it, me isolated, expressing my thoughts and feelings. And in that sense, it's very meditative, almost hermetic. But with like Wit's End, for example, I kind of shifted the focus outward, and started to think about and ruminate on humanity or mankind in general, and not just me, and my own thoughts and feelings. And with Prosaic, uh, I guess it's kind of a marriage of the two, um, where I am talking about my thoughts and feelings, but I think I'm talking about things that are so universal, that it's also about mankind, everyone's experience of waking up day in, day out, the daily grind, working, and trying to make sense and meaning and enjoyment and fulfillment out of life and its futility. Um, and so with Prosaic, I actually specifically gave the instruction to Brian Proto, the artist, that I didn't want it to just be one person in the scene. And it started off as, maybe it's a drawing of a civilization or a scene, with a few people in it. And it turned out to be more zoomed in than that, but there is a second person in the picture, because I didn't want it to just feel like another, I don't know, like a sort of self-centered message. So it is intentional that there's a second figure on that cover.
Okay, interesting. Going back to this idea that you wanted to make this new record less grandiose, is this also why it's shorter? Well, on Mizmor standards, because your albums tend to be longer than what you'd find on metal standards in any case. But this time is going to be 46 minutes, whereas most of the previous records could be 1 hour long or more.
Yeah, absolutely. I between Cairn and Prosaic, I've started to kind of think like a producer more. I've produced a couple records for friends' bands, and it's changed my approach to my own music, where I'm asking myself questions about how interesting something is, how well it holds your attention, and where the fat is that could be trimmed off. And I wanted to make a record that, like you said, in terms of Mizmor standards, is shorter, punchier, get in, say what you got to say, and get out. So I felt like kind of around 45 minutes is, for me, kind of the perfect listening experience. That's the length of album that I appreciate. 30 is just, you want more. An hour, it's like a little bit too long. So I'm making the records, for myself, because I have to, as always, but I'm also thinking about other people and my listeners and what I like as a listener, when I'm not making my own self-involved music. So I was trying to cater to that more and make a record that I thought would feel continually interesting and attention holding, and not this like 70-minute thing that's like really punishing and challenging and hard to get through. I wanted to make it easier to listen to, more fun.
Okay. Well, thanks for this good start. The next question I'm going to maybe focus a bit more on the tracks themselves and the themes that revolve around the record. You mentioned already things related to the daily grind, to dealing with the absurdity of people's lives. So we're going to talk about that. I hope so. Starting with the first track, Only an Expanse. Well, right from the title, I guess one could imagine a big void or something like that, thinking of expanse, feels like you're wandering in a great nothing or something like that, lacking an anchor point. So is this related to, well, the kind of slavery we're in into work and this daily grind you mentioned? Is it related also to time passing to some extent? Since you say you draw another breath, time is a useful fiction or chosen taskmaster. What do you think?
Yeah, so Prosaic is the first record that I've made that doesn't really have any single overarching concept. I've kind of construed a concept in hindsight. Now, when I talk about the record, I can kind of say, oh, it's basically about this. But each song is actually about a different thing. That's another one of the traits that makes it more slice of life and less conceptual and grandiose. And one of the themes on the record, as there are many, is shedding illusions and how this can improve our lives and eliminate needless suffering for ourselves and others. And one of those illusions that I think it's helpful to at least toggle back and forth between perspectives is with time. And that song, Only an Expanse, is largely about time and how we perceive it passing and how we see ourselves as the subject of a story where I'm in the present moment now, and behind me is the past, and in front of me is the future. And it's not that there's anything wrong with this view. We need to take this view to plan out our lives and make intelligent guesses and plans about our future and learn lessons from our past. But if you drop back and take in just the raw data of experience, you don't find a past or a future, maybe even a present. You just find an expanse. You just find consciousness. And I think it's helpful to recognize that perspective as well, because we can often go around our daily lives lost in thought, thinking about fear of the future, regret of the past, and anxiety and depression that are kind of tied into this linear perception of time and our perception as a self within that. And it's possible to kind of drop back from that and take a break from it and just be. And that's kind of what that song's about.
Okay, thanks. Well, again, I may be wrong because I felt like Only an Expense in the second track, No Place to Arrive, were somewhat linked, because in No Place to Arrive, there's still, I think, this idea that you're, well, lost in the same big void I was mentioning, because, well, as written in the title, there's nowhere to get to. And at some point you say this is a task struggling just to be. So of course it's related to the fact of being, I guess, but being lost within this expanse, again, feels like that.
Yeah, with Only an Expanse, with No Place to Arrive, they're similar sentiments, but with No Place to Arrive, I was thinking a lot about how we go about in our daily lives, and we have thoughts like, oh, once I get this done, or once I get to the end of my to-do list, then I'll feel better. Or if I only could have done this a different way, then it would be all these if-then statements about getting to some place in the future where we'll be happy. Sort of the grass is always greener mentality. And No Place to Arrive seeks to dismantle that illusion, because it is an illusion, and there's no place to get to at all. And in fact, you're already here, and this is all that there ever is. So this fictional heaven that you're trying to get to in your life, maybe in 10, 20 years, wherever you foresee yourself arriving and being happy one day, that's actually available to you now, theoretically. Another illusion that is worth breaking to just kind of eliminate a little bit of daily suffering as we go through our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll be rebounding of this on this last point you made. Like, is the album about trying to learn to live in the present in some sense? And because we're always thinking, myself included, about, of course, the past and what may come in the future, and it is hard some days. It is hard, and you're never sure if there's an actual end to this. Lots of people have a to-do list. I have one as well, but there's always things adding up into it. So there's no actual ending to all that. And if I look at the last two tracks, well, it feels like anything but continues in the general idea of the two previous tracks, and yet starting with acceptance, it's as if you don't arrive in a place, but you arrive with the idea, at least mentally, that things are the way they are, and well, we should try to accept them the way they are and just be ourselves in the present, try and stave off depression and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I would say in hindsight that one of the biggest themes on the record is living in the present moment and mindfulness. And those, I find that important because I think that it improves the quality of a person's life and thus the other lives around them that they touch. And yeah, anything but it does continue in that theme. It's kind of about existence itself. You want anything but raw existence. We want to, use drugs and alcohol. We want to watch TV and be on our phones. We want to distract ourselves. Anything but just actually engaging with reality. And Acceptance is a song about depression, which is a thing that continually cycles in and out of my life and always will. And I've gotten to the point with that where I've tried to kind of make friends with it loosely. I mean, it sucks. It's not a thing to be desired by any means. But I found that there's this secondary emotion, this reaction that I often have to feeling depression again and being disappointed that I am, being upset that I am. And that I've improved that reaction by just feeling the depression and allowing it to be there and remembering that it'll go away and just saying, okay, so what? So I don't, have anxiety about being depressed as badly anymore. This record is like all the songs are still written to me. They're like advice that I'm giving myself. I don't think that I've like gotten to some enlightened place with any of these things by any means. But they're lessons that I'm trying to learn that I think are valuable, that I'm reminding myself to stay in the present moment, reminding myself that it's okay to be depressed and things like that.
Thanks. One last question about the track Anything But. At the very beginning of the track, we can hear someone talking. I'm not exactly sure of what it was. Is it a quote from something?
It is a poem that I wrote and deconstructed and read and then did some magic to make it sound like a sample.
Okay, interesting. Okay, let's continue a bit outside of the tracks now. So while the record, as you said, does not summon any religious ideas, it still, is about some of your struggles. Although in this case, these are struggles that are shared by a lot of people on the planet. But these struggles also being yours, is it not in one way a continuation to your previous records? And I mean a logical continuation as well, because these struggles were already there to some extent in the music as well.
Yes, of course. And I hope that my work has a through line for people in that way. So it's the same in the sense that I am still processing my thoughts and feelings, and a lot of these things like depression are things I've talked about a lot before and have been in my life for a long time. The main difference is just that there's nothing about God or atheism on the record, and that is different from any of my previous works, but it's still existential and full of struggle, and that's always going to be a part of my life. That's what drives me to make music, I suppose.
Okay, and why is your project called Mizmor though? Because I always found funny that if I'm not mistaken, it means song in Hebrew, right? So it's a religious term for a musical project that is about going away from religion. I find that interesting.
That's exactly right. I started the project in 2012. I was a devout Christian at the time and was losing my faith in God and was horribly depressed. So I started to write dark, painful prayers to God, or psalms, melodies. I was writing these songs because I couldn't pray anymore. I had gotten to the point with my spiritual disciplines that they felt like really hollow, like I was just going through the motions. And the only really genuine thing I could do was make the first Mizmor album. And if you read those lyrics, they're addressed to God. They're all in the second person, you. It's a prayer. And so I had done a bunch of formal Bible study. I'd read the Bible from cover to cover multiple times, and I was really connected to the book of Psalms from the Old Testament, from the Hebrew Bible. And that is the mechanism in that book, is writing prayers and songs and melodies to God. And so I took that as my jumping off point to make this record. And so I titled the project Mizmor, which means psalm.
Cool. And would you say then that the music you're doing now could be, I don't know, prayers for humans or something like that?
I suppose you could call it that. I think over the years, my music has lost a recipient of that prayer, a subject, or a thing that an entity that it's devoted to. So I would hesitate to call it a prayer, but you could call it a meditation. And it certainly does serve a similar purpose for me, which is a therapeutic, cathartic kind of purge of sadness and angst and dread in a constructive way. And yeah, I mean, I do see a connection. It's the same mechanism for me that I'm exercising, but the fact that God's not there on the other side anymore is not to be overlooked, at least for me.
Of course. Considering that last year you've released with A.L.N, you've also released a collaboration album, Myopia with Thou. Well, that's a lot of music in 2 years if you add to that Prosaic this year. Considering the short amount of time in between everything, are they somewhat related or not?
They're not related at all. Which I'm surprised at my own musical output during the past couple of years. Maybe the pandemic was part of that, kind of, because shows weren't really a thing, so people were writing music. I don't really know, but it's interesting for me because I do, there's a few different functions that happen when I write music, like based on what type of release it is. So you've got like full lengths, you've got collaborations, you've got like EPs and singles. And so like when I make an EP or a single like Wit's End, that's the time that I take to get more experimental, push the envelope, do something a little bit more different. I usually mix those myself to take time to get my engineering chops dusted off. Then collaborations are like, I mean, just totally their own thing because there's a whole other force involved that you are writing with together. And then full lengths are like, for Prosaic's like, you know, the next installment where Cairn was the one before it. And even though there's lots of music in between, there's the Andrew Black collab as well, and Wit's End and the Thou collab. Those are all like different, I don't know, sub avenues of exploration for me. And now we're back to like saying something substantial, going back to my own story that I'm working through.
Okay, great. One question I had as well, I am not American, so I do not know how people get into music in the US through which outlets, but considering your religious background, I can assume that you've been raised in a religious family. I'm not sure how someone in a religious family would stumble upon black metal, doom metal, funeral doom metal. I mean, at least not as easily as some other families, possibly, because I would assume that your parents might not listen to that. And I know because my parents do not listen to metal at all, and of course not extreme metal as well. And they have a hard time understanding it from time to time. And I had to discover these things myself one way or other. How did that work for you?
Yeah, I was a pretty sheltered kid. I was mainly allowed to listen to Christian music and Weird Al. And as I grew older, I got to listen to things that my parents liked, like classic rock. And I also really liked really heavy Christian music. I was still allowed to listen to that, even though it sounds insane, because it's somehow still about God. Um, and from a young age, I was playing instruments and participating in bands with friends. So a love of heavy music and classic rock, plus other people going to public school, playing shows downtown, whatnot. That kind of set me on a path of exploring. Like, I went from like, you know, the Beatles to the Doors to Pink Floyd to Black Sabbath to Electric Wizard to Sleep to Burning Witch kind of thing. So by the time I was, you know, 16 to 18, somewhere in there, I was consuming metal, and like, you know, my parents can't really control what I listen to anymore, even if they try. So at that point, music was getting more evil, more extreme. I heard Wolves in the Throne Room through Southern Lord, which was the doom label I really liked. And from there, got into more black metal and more extreme doom metal.
Okay, cool. We're starting to reach the end of my question. So the next one, well, about the general topics of, well, your music and also Prosaic. Well, music that is bordering on themes revolving around absurdity, nihilism to some extent, depression, and other extremely funny topics like those. Well, of course, that's not funny at all, but I know a lot of people are attracted to music like Mizmor, because, well, myself included, people may feel similar. And considering that Prosaic is for people, I guess it makes a lot of sense that people feel similar. However, well, it's not always easy for people to cope with their inner demons. Everyone tries to find their own solutions. Music is one means for you, I guess. And I'm assuming that at least some of the people who might listen to this interview, who might watch this interview, will feel the same, or at least to some extent, similar feelings. What would you say to those people who might share similar stories to those you try to express?
Good question. I would encourage people to explore their thoughts and feelings and sit with them and then express them. And that can be in a number of different ways, whether that's through words in a journal or a book, or through a painting or a drawing, or through writing songs. That's been the most helpful thing for me in practice to cope with existence, is to feel the things, identify the things, process the things, and get them out. And then you hopefully experience some sort of acceptance or closure or healing through this creative therapy. Actual therapy is helpful as well, be it talk therapy or otherwise. And just hobbies, doing things that you genuinely love. The other things that help me a lot in my life are important relationships, keeping my side of that up and staying engaged with people I love, my pets, and bits of mindless entertainment that I find engaging, or even little bits of escapism. Finding things that excite you, that you love, and things that give you purpose and meaning in your life. Identify those things and press into those things, because that's all there is.
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of people, even if not so many people will listen to this, I'm sure those who will be happy to hear that. So thank you. Well, I guess this is the end of my, I hope not so boring questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we stop this?
Just thanks for the chat. Thanks for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to get to talk to you about the new record and talk to your viewers about the new record. And I hope that people enjoy it and are okay in their lives.
Thanks. Well, the new record, in my opinion, is great. And although, compared to, let's say, I don't know, new listeners to Mizmor, I've been listening to Mizmor for a while, so I'm used to long records, or at least longer records. I'm fine with that one being 46 minutes. It was extremely enjoyable. I've listened to it several times ever since I received it in my email box. It's really great. I can't speak for other people, but I'm sure they'll love it.
Thank you so much.
So thank you again for having this chat with me. Thank you for the music you're making, because Mizmor is an important band for me. Well, one-man band, I guess, because it talks to me, to my own inner demons. So that in itself is also a bit of therapy, I guess. So thanks again, and hopefully see you next time at a concert or something on the other side of a pond, because I'm in France.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much.